Hello, dear students. Today we are going to discuss about weekly current affairs from Science and Technology section, and we will be broadly covering issues from 29th of March to 4th of April. The topics that we are going to discuss under Science and Technology section will be Baikal GVD, CME's identification in inner solar corona. CME here, CME stands for coronal mass ejections from the surface of the sun. Then the third topic would be National Policy on Rare Diseases 2021 that has been recently released by the Government of India. Then we do have ACT accelerator with respect to COVID-19 test treatment. Then we will be discussing about red algal seaweed species that have been recently found in along the coast of Gujarat and Daman and Diu. Next, asteroid Apophis and Enceladus, the moon of Saturn. Further, we will be having our Culex mosquitoes and its impact on human health, undersea internet cables, which USA is lying down to connect with Indonesia and Singapore. In defense section, we will be talking about exercise Vajra Prahar 2021, Shantinir Ogroshena 2021 that will be conducted in Bangladesh, and joint logistics notes, the last topic of today's session. Now we should move on to our first topic in science and technology section, that is Baikal GVD. So Baikal GVD, what does it stand for? It has been in news recently as Russian scientists have deployed Baikal Gigaton Volume Detector (GVD) in the waters of Lake Baikal, which lies in the country of Russia. What is Baikal Gigaton Volume Detector? Sir, its construction started in 2016 and it is one of the three largest neutrino detectors in the world, with the ice cube at the South Pole and Antares in the Mediterranean Sea. It will study the elusive fundamental particles called neutrinos and possibly determine their sources. I would like you to focus on this term ice cube. This is UPSC has asked a question about ice cubes in its prelims exam 2015. See, what question did UPSC ask was ice cube, and it gave three statements regarding this ice cube. It asked whether it is the largest neutrino detector, then it asked whether this powerful telescope would search dark matter, and thirdly it gave the statement that it is buried deep in ice, and all these three statements were correct as it was in news at that point of time. So we should be focusing upon that what kind of questions UPSC does ask and how our current affairs is related to that. So Baikal GVT, there might be a question on that in near future in UPSC prelims exam. Now moving on to the next point, Baikal GVD, this is a gigaton volume detector, will help scientists in understanding the origins of the universe, since some neutrinos were formed during the Big Bang and others continue to be formed as a result of supernova explosions or because of nuclear reactions in the sun. Clear freshwater and thick and productive ice cover make Lake Baikal an ideal place to search for neutrinos. You noticed that ice cube was also beneath the ice, it was buried in the ice, and similarly here also this Baikal GVD also is placed in the same manner. Fundamental particles, now we should talk about the fundamental particles. So far, the understanding is that the universe is made of some fundamental particles which are indivisible or cannot be broken down further into smaller particles. So you can understand or you can see that fundamental particle means those particles which are fundamental or basic to the constitution of the universe. So broadly, particles of matter can be classified into quarks and leptons, which make up the normal matter that accounts for only 5% of the universe. So the thing which should be noticed here is that the quarks and leptons are constituting only 5% of the universe. There is not much information about the remaining 95% of the universe, of which scientists say that 27% is the dark matter, and further they have no idea about the remaining 68% yet. So you can see that universe is still largely unexplored, and with today's technology and science, we are still unable to understand the nature of the matter of the universe. Exploration in the field of physics so far has led to the discovery of 12 such quarks and leptons, and three out of them, that is protons, neutrons, and electrons, out of those have made everything in the world. So whatever the world we see is constituted of protons, neutrons, and electrons in different proportions. Here, protons carry a positive charge and neutrons carry no charge. They are the type of quarks, whereas electrons carry a negative charge and a type of lepton. These three particles make atoms, also referred to as the building block of life. Yes, sometimes question do arise that what are considered as the building blocks of life. So these are atoms which are considered as the building block of life. In different combinations, these particles can make different kinds of atoms, which in turn make up molecules that form everything. So what we do have up here is fundamental particles as the basis of the universe and every kind of matter. Then these constitute comes together to form atoms, which in turn create molecules by coming together. Studying fundamental particles gives scientists a window into understanding the universe in a better way. And that is why scientists wanted to study neutrinos, not the same as neutrons, which are also a type of fundamental particles. Okay, neutrinos. Let us discuss about what are neutrinos and why are they important for us. They are the smallest particles currently known, and about 1,000 trillion of them pass through our human body every second. Nearly massless subatomic particles, they are the second most abundant particles after photons, are particles of light. However, they are not easy to catch because they do not carry a charge and subsequently do not interact with matter. They might have unique properties that that would help explain why the universe is made of matter instead of antimatter. So it shows the importance of neutrinos. These subatomic particles that make up antimatter have properties that are opposite to normal matter. So as you can see that with the name antimatter, it shows that whatever matter is there, its antimatter also exists. It is known that antimatter exists, but the reason for its existence or the differences of its subatomic particle is not known. So still the research is going on, but there is no concrete evidence yet about the existence of antimatter and why they exist in the first place. Neutrinos can be detected in water or ice as they leave a flash of light or a line of bubbles when they interact. So this could be a potential UPSC question statement wise, that why the neutrino detectors are largely placed beneath ice or buried deep in ice, or they are placed in Lake Baikal or any kind of lake. So it is easily detectable in water or ice as they leave a flash of light or line of bubbles when they interact. To capture these signs, large detectors and gigaton volume detector have been designed to detect high energy neutrinos that may have come from the Earth's core or could have been produced during nuclear reactions in the sun. Let's know about Lake Baikal too. It is located in the southeast Siberian region of Russia. The 3.15 million hectares lake is the oldest lake and deepest lake in the world. This is a potential statement wise question forming information. Further, Lake Baikal contains 20% of the world's total unfrozen freshwater reserve. It is known as the Galapagos of Russia. Its age and isolation have produced one of the world's richest and most unusual freshwater faunas. ठीक है, तो why it is considered as Galapagos of Russia? Because of its extremely rich biodiversity composition. It is home to approximately 1700 to 1800 endemic plant and animal species. In 1996, it was declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site. See, UNESCO World Heritage Sites started, or the first time they have come into being through a treaty in 1972. So this is Lake Baikal in Russia. Within, and this you can see it is next to Pacific Ocean, but it is covered by the territory of a land in Russia. So why it is called Galapagos, or what is Galapagos in itself? Galapagos Islands are part of Ecuador. Galapagos Islands are extremely rich in diversity, and they are part of Ecuador in South America, and it is in itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site. World Heritage Site. So naturally, the questions arises that what are the various World UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India? So as we can see that India do have many UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and India has a total of 38 World Heritage Sites. Out of those 38, 30 are cultural sites, 7 are natural World Heritage Sites, and 1 is a mixed site. The mixed site is has been recently declared like 3 or 4 years back, and it is a Khang Chen Zonga National Park in Sikkim. Okay, so further, one should know that when was the first time that UNESCO World Heritage Sites has been declared in India, and those were declared in 1983 for the first time. Four of the sites were declared in that year. First is Agra Fort, second is Taj Mahal, third is Ajanta Caves, and fourth is Ellora Caves. So we should be knowing about this thing because this is a factual information, and which UPSC might ask because of the importance, because of the critical importance of the nature of these sites. So let's on move on to next slide, and we do have now the second topic, that is CME's identification in inner solar corona. So why was it is in the news? Um, Recently, researchers from Aryabhat Research Institute of Observable Sciences (ARIES) in Nainital and the Royal Observatory of Belgium have developed CME's identification in inner solar corona. From prelims point of view, these two statements are important. That where is the location of Aryabhat Research Institute of Observational Sciences in India, and it is located in Nainital, Uttarakhand. And secondly, with which country is India developing CME's identification in inner solar corona? So it is Belgium, as you can see. Secondly, ARIES is an autonomous institute under the Department of Science and Technology. About this project, CISCO, it is an algorithm that will detect and track the accelerating coronal mass ejections in the lower corona, that is the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. So it is important from the perspective that the coronal mass ejections, which have a direct bearing on Earth's outer atmosphere and its satellites, So they should be tracked and detected beforehand, and for that, CME's identification in inner solar corona project has been launched. So CMEs cause various disturbances to the space environment, like disrupting space weather, causing geomagnetic storms, satellite failures, and power outages. Therefore, forecasting their arrival time is very important. So this in itself shows that a significance of coronal learning about coronal mass ejections is very important. Cisco has been successfully tested on several eruptions observed by space observatories, including Solar Dynamics Observatory and Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory by National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA), and the second time Proba 2 or SWAP, launched by the European Space Agency. So sometimes these names also become important. That what are the various observatories, and which organization or institution runs those observatories. So Solar Dynamics Observatory and Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory is of the NASA, and Proba 2 or SWAP is launched by European Space Agency. So it should be noted down with focus. The significance and implementation of Cisco on the large volume of data available from space observatories will be helpful to improve the understanding of eruptions in the inner corona, a region where properties of such eruptions are less known. The other application of this project, Cisco project, it will be used in India's first solar mission, Aditya L1. So this is a piece of information that you must not miss. That India's first solar mission is named Aditya L1 mission. We'll be talking about Aditya L1 again in later slides. Firstly, we should discuss about earlier forecasting method. So earlier it was Cactus, computer aided CME tracking software. It is a software based on computer vision algorithm that was so far used to detect and characterize such eruptions automatically in the outer corona. What are the challenges associated with the earlier forecasting method? Cactus could not be applied in the inner corona observations due to the vast acceleration experienced by these eruptions and severely limited the capability to track them. Moreover, with the advancement in space technology, there has been a tremendous increase in the amount of data, and manual tracking and identification of solar eruptions is a tedious process. So it is a tedious process to detect them. Then there is this vast acceleration which makes it difficult to track them, the eruptions. Limited CME observations in interplanetary space hinder forecasting accuracy. तो accuracy भी एक challenge बना रहता है इसमें. Coronal mass ejections. So, what is coronal mass ejections? They are powerful eruptions near the surface of the sun, driven by King's disturbances in the solar magnetic field, and the resulting shocks ripple through the solar system. ठीक है? During the CME, enormous bubbles of superheated gas called plasma are ejected from the sun and accelerated to speeds of 1.6 million kilometers per hour. ठीक है. The underlying cause of CMEs is not well understood, but has been agreed by astronomers that the sun's magnetic field plays a major role. So, underlying causes why coronal mass ejections occur. So, it is not well understood, but they do play an important role in sun's magnetic field, and that's why it becomes important for astronomers to learn about coronal mass ejections. The onslaught of charged particles and the temporary restructuring of Earth's magnetic field has observable effects. For example, auroral lights. So auroral lights that we talk about on North Pole or in the South Pole, the magnificent beautiful lights, so they are also directly influenced by coronal mass ejections. So auroral lights, usually only seen near the poles, can drift to lower latitudes and become more brilliant. It can also expose Earth to deadly cosmic rays, and the astronauts in space may receive lethal doses of radiation. So, when the world is going for space exploration, and we are talking about various projects of SpaceX who wants to colonize the planet of Mars. then it becomes very important to understand the various dynamics of coronal mass ejections. Further, it has the potential to severely disrupt power grids, satellites, communication networks, that is anything that uses electricity. So it means coronal mass ejections directly influence critical infrastructure of any nation. So it becomes imperative to understand its impact and trace and track its behavior. So as you can see in the figure that this is the sun spot, and here we can see coronal mass ejections from inner corona, and this is the magnetic field southern of the sun, and this is the earth's magnetic field, as you can see. So what impact does these coronal mass ejections have on earth's behavior, earth's outer surface and outer atmosphere, and the various l- life forms on earth? Then we should be talking about the project Aditya L1 of India. Aditya L1 is India's first dedicated scientific mission to study the sun orbit. It will be inserted into a halo orbit around the Lagrangian point L1 of the Sun-Earth system, which is 1.5 million kilometers from the Earth. It will have a major advantage of continuously viewing the sun without any occultation or eclipses. So what kind of payloads does Aditya L1 uses? So it uses a visible emission line coronagraph and additional six payloads. What will be the launch vehicle for it? This is very important, that the launch vehicle of Aditya L1. So it is a PSLV XL from Sriharikota, India. PSLV is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Here we should you have read about Lagrangian point. So do you have any idea about what is Lagrangian points? Let me tell you about this in a bit elaborate manner. Lagrangian points are the 5 points. They are around major bodies such as planet or a star. So Lagrangian points are designated by L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. So generally, three of them lie along the line connecting the two large bodies. For example, this is the sun, this is Earth, and this is like Sun Earth system. So we will be having these five Lagrangian points somewhere here, and three of them, the first three of them, such as L1, L2, and L3, are unstable by nature, whereas L4 and L5 are stable by nature. So what does these Lagrangian points designate? So what does this mean? That what is the function of these points? So these points tend to balance a body which is so smaller compared to the other two bodies such as Sun and Earth. So these Lagrangian points are used to place a satellite in the to place a satellite in the Lagrangian point so that it can be its gravitational effect is balanced by two larger bodies, and it is placed in equilibrium here. So Aditya L1 will be here in Lagrangian point 1. So here it can see the sun and study it and study its effect. Significance of this mission: under the mission, the study of Sun's corona, solar emissions, solar winds and flares, and CMEs will be conducted. Its studies will enhance the current understanding of the solar corona and also provide vital data for space weather studies. So let's move on to the third topic of today's session: National Policy for Rare Diseases 2021. So it was recently announced by the government of India that there will be national policy for rare diseases 2021. So, what are rare diseases? We should be knowing about them in detail. Rare diseases are also called orphan diseases because they are rare by nature and they are considered orphan diseases. They are broadly defined as diseases that infrequently occur in a population, and three markers are used: the total number of people with the disease, its prevalence, and the availability non availability of treatment options. So what define rare diseases? How are they defined that these are rare? So there are three markers, three parameters on the basis of which these diseases are classified. For example, the first one is total number of people with the disease, its prevalence, the second, and the availability or non-availability of treatment options. This is the third point on the basis of which we classify any of the rare diseases. World Health Organization (WHO) defines a rare disease as having a frequency of less than 6.5 to 10 people per 10,000 people. So, when any disease out of 10,000 people infects around 6.5 to 10 people only, then it is considered as rare disease by WHO. As per an estimate, there are 7,000 known rare diseases with an estimated 300 million patients in the world. Challenges in fighting rare diseases. So, these diseases have differing definitions in various countries and present fundamentally different challenges from those of more common diseases. According to the Organization for Rare Diseases India, rare diseases include inherited cancers, autoimmune disorders, congenital malformations, Hirschsprung's disease, Gaucher disease, cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophies, and lysosomal storage disorders. So, I would like you to remember these disease names. These will be important because UPSC is in the habit of surprising everybody, and now when this policy has come, in 2021, so there might be a chance that in prelims it might ask what are the various rare diseases, and it will put options like these diseases and will ask you to identify which are the rare diseases. Further, less than 5% have therapies available to treat them, and about 95% have no approved treatment, and less than 1 in 10 patients receive disease specific treatment. Where drugs are available, they are prohibitively expensive, placing immense strain on resources, and also the government has not been able to provide these for free. This is the most apparent during the clinical development stage when rarity significantly complicates the task. Problems include the small number of patients, the logistics involved in reaching widely dispersed patients, the lack of validated biomarkers and surrogate endpoints, and limited clinical expertise and expert centers. In India, there is a lack of epidemiological data on the prevalence here, and hence has only classified certain diseases as rare. So you can see that these are the various challenges that India's health sector also faces. There are an estimated 70 million patients of rare disease in India. That is a very, very significant number. But due to India's huge population, this is often not taken care of properly. So, what are the various steps that have been taken for rare diseases? The International Rare Diseases Research Consortium (IRDIRC) was launched in 2011 to foster international collaboration in rare diseases research. So there is an international rare diseases research consortium which was launched in 2011 to foster international collaboration in rare diseases research. However, despite these positive developments, the burden of rare diseases continues to persist. National policy for rare diseases. Let us see some feature points of this policy, which is important from a prelims point of view 2021. So, firstly, what does this policy aims at? So, it offers financial support for one-time treatment of up to rupees 20 lakh, introduces crowdfunding mechanism, and creates a registry of rare diseases and provides for early detection. It was first prepared by Center in 2017 but was put on hold due to questions on its formations, criteria, cost sharing, beneficiaries, etc. An expert group was constituted in 2018 to review these questions, which submitted its report in January 2021, and after a further round of consultation, the policy has been made public. It categorizes rare diseases. The policy categorizes rare diseases into three groups. So what are these three groups? Group 1, disorders amenable to one time curative treatment. So those disorders which can be treated in a single effort or one time, or which needs one time curative treatment, comes under group 1. So the beneficiaries who are eligible for one time treatment cost of up to 20 lakh, provided that they conform to the definition of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana and were treated in government tertiary care hospital under the umbrella scheme of Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi Yojana. So Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi provides for financial assistance to patients living below poverty line. So this should be the marker that Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi provides financial assistance to only those patients which are living below poverty line and who are suffering from major life-threatening diseases to receive medical treatment at any of the super specialty government hospitals or institutes. So what is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana? It is Ayushman Bharat Yojana, or the flagship scheme of Government of India. So what are its major features? That it provides 5 lakh cover 5 lakh cover to the patients per family per annum. It is 5 lakh rupees cover per family per annum. It provides it covers a secondary and tertiary healthcare and aimed at benefiting 50 crore beneficiaries. So it is into secondary and tertiary healthcare. So the patients or the beneficiaries can avail the benefits under secondary and tertiary healthcare facilities, and it aims at 50 crore beneficiaries in India. It does not cover primary healthcare facilities. So now what do we have in group 2? Diseases requiring long-term or lifelong treatment having relatively lower cost of treatment and a benefit has been documented in literature, and annual or more frequent surveillance is required. So states could consider supporting patients of such rare diseases that could be managed with special diets or hormonal supplements. So in group 2, we are looking forward to the patients with a lifelong, which requires the diseases which require lifelong or long-term treatment. And then we do have group 3, diseases for which definitive treatment is available, but challenges are to make optimal patient selection for benefit, very high cost and lifelong therapy. ठीक है, तो दिस इज द इन ग्रुप 3 diseases, rare diseases, those rare diseases are there which require definitive treatment, but it also has certain challenges such as optimal patient selection for benefit. It is referred to identify very high cost and lifelong therapy. So the government would notify selected centers of excellence at premier government hospitals for comprehensive management of rare diseases. The Centers of Excellence would be provided a one-time grant to a maximum of rupees 5 crore each for infrastructure development for screening, tests and treatment. So what is the significance of this policy? Generally, we should have a critical examination of any policy that the government releases. So right now, it has not been implemented yet in its entirety. So we should look at its significance instead of its critical examination. So significance, it will increase focus on indigenous research and local production of medicines. Under crowdfunding, corporates and individuals will be encouraged to extend financial support through a robust IT platform. The National Hospital-based registry will ensure adequate data and comprehensive definitions of such diseases, rare diseases. Early screening and detection will help the prevention of rare diseases. What are the concerns related to the policy? It offers no support to patients. Under the earlier National Policy for Treatment of Rare Disease 2017, patients with group 3 rare diseases are left to fend for themselves due to the lack of proper selection criteria. So these are the various concerns related to the policy, that it becomes difficult to identify patients with group 3 rare diseases because of the lack of proper selection criteria. Then, in the absence of a sustainable funding support for Group 3 patients, the lives of all patients, mostly children, are now at risk and at the mercy of crowdfunding. Even Group 1 is only for a few, and Group 2 has been openly left for the state government. The policy fails to capture that these diseases last a lifetime and also does not realize that people might not be able to even make it to the prescribed tertiary hospitals for treatment. See, India's most of the population, around more than 65%, lives in rural areas with the least accessibility to tertiary healthcare facilities. So we should understand that it becomes very challenging to have get the treatment from the tertiary hospitals, as this prescribes. Diseases such as LSD, for which definitive treatment is available but costs are prohibitive, have been categorized as Group 3. However, no funding has been allocated for the immediate and lifelong treatment needs for therapies already approved by the Drugs Controller General of India. So, what are the suggestions that what could be done to improve the policy outcomes and the policy features? So, there is a need to balance competing priorities of public health in resource constrained settings. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare should come up with an immediate seed funding of rupees 80 crore to rupees 100 crores so that the life saving therapy of all patients can be provided, thereby reducing further loss of life. It should also design and execute a 100-day rollout plan after the national policy is notified to prioritize treatment of all eligible rare disease patients and prioritize and encourage states with a matching grant. If the center is able to extend the cost sharing agreements that it has worked out with Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, with other states too, its share of the annual costs will be halved. So it is like hedging, cost sharing will be hedging, and it will help patients to get benefits with the cost effective measures. Now, moving on to our next topic, ACT accelerator. So, is what is ACT accelerator? So, ACT accelerator is the access to COVID 19 tools accelerator. It is a ground-breaking global collaboration to accelerate development, production, and equitable access to COVID 19 tests, treatments, and vaccines. It was launched at the end of April 2020. It brings together governments, scientists, businesses, civil society, philanthropists, and global health organizations. So it is a collaborative effort, global collaborative effort. The ACT Accelerator is organized into four pillars of work, that is diagnostics, treatment, vaccines, and health system strengthening. So, what are the four pillars of work under ACT Accelerator? These are diagnostics, treatment, vaccines, and health system strengthening. So, let's know more about ACT Accelerator. So, ACT Accelerator was launched in response to a call from G20 leaders in March 2020, when corona or COVID pandemic was spreading alarmingly across the world, and it was launched by WHO, later words, European Commission, France, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Okay. Further, we should also know about various Indian medicines, like what are the various vaccines that India has developed recently. So, what we have developed is Covishield, Covishield by Serum Institute of India, and COVAX, and Covaxin, which is prepared and developed by Bharat Biotech. So we should be knowing about the name of India's corona vaccines. Further, what is the target of India? Like for how long India is preparing, and what is the next target for India to vaccinate its all citizens? So firstly, India right now is targeting around 250 million people vaccination by end of July 31st, 2021. So you can see that India is trying to vaccinate around 20 to 25% of its population by the end of July 2021. Over today, over 84 by today, over 84 million COVID vaccine doses have been administered across India. So now we should move on to our next topic: red algal seaweed species. So why it was in the news? So recently, two varieties have been discovered along the coasts of Kanyakumari in Tamil Nadu and in Gujarat and Daman and Diu recently. The fine and hairy algae Hypnea indica. Hypnea indica, you should be remembering the name Hypnea indica and Hypnea bullata. So the fine and hairy algae Hypnea indica was discovered in Shivrajpur and Somnath Patan in Gujarat, and Hypnea bullata grew along the coastline of Daman and Diu. So UPSC is in the habit of asking questions which generally gets unheard of but becomes very important. As you can see, this is an important discovery that they have been first time discovered along Indian coast. Earlier, it asked about a particular kind of a snake that was found in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So this news becomes really important from the prelims point of view. It is for the first time that these have been discovered along Indian coasts. These red algal species thrive on rocks that submerged during high tides and remain exposed during low tides. Scientists applied morphology with the DNA barcoding techniques in order to confirm the novelty of these two species. These can fetch good monetary value if commercial scale cultivation is taken up, but seaweed cultivation is yet unpopular in India. Hypnea contains carrageenan, you should also remember this name, a biomolecule commonly used in the food industry that can be potential raw material for those involved in jelly and ice cream production. So as you can see, this is the figure of Hypnea indica with the species name, and this is Hypnea bullata. So let us know a bit more about um, algae based biofuels. So it has been in the recent news that there is a growing demand for algae based biofuels, but the questions have been raised about the limitations of developing countries in promoting this industry. So we should be knowing that algae-based biofuels will be helpful in the long run to replace fossil fuel-based automobile industry. But at the same time, its development requires high level of technical expertise, and it also needs setting up of large-scale facilities, which may raise ecological and social concerns, and hence algae-based biofuels remain a challenge to be developed in limited capacities of developing countries such as India. So we should move on to our next topic: asteroid Apophis. It was discovered in 2014 and is 340 meters big. The asteroid has been named after Apophis, the ancient Egyptian deity of chaos and darkness. Earlier, NASA classified it as a potential hazardous asteroid and predicted that it would come threateningly close to the Earth in 2019, 2036, and 2068. However, according to NASA's Center for Near Earth Object Studies (CNEOS), the impact risk has been ruled out for at least the next 600 years. CNEOS maintains a Sentry Impact Risk Table, also known as the Risk List, which include the details of an asteroid that orbits close to the Earth. So you should remember this risk table name, Century Impact Risk Table, and what does it do? So it provides the details of an asteroid that orbits close to Earth from the prelims point of view. It is expected to approach Earth again in 2029 and will be in close proximity to 32,000 kilometers and can be seen from Asia, Africa, and some parts of Europe without binoculars or telescopes. Then next topic is Enceladus. What is it? It is an icy and sixth largest moon of Saturn, which has a total of 82 moons. It is 500 kilometers in diameter and is about 1400 million kilometers away from the sun. Under its pock-marked, cratered, and rippled ice shell, it has an ocean and many of the ingredients to support Earth-like life. NASA's now dead probe Cassini has confirmed that the natural geysers of the moon spray some of its oceans into space, a possible source of Saturn's E-ring, which contains life-supporting ingredients. So this is the image of Saturn's moon Enceladus. This is the graphical representation, which shows that it has a thick ice crust, and then it has beneath that a global ocean, and beneath that there is this rocky core. South polar region have active jets. Generally, most of the celestial bodies tend to have like planetary bodies or the moons, natural satellites. So Cassini was the first dedicated spacecraft to look at Saturn and its system. Enceladus is also geologically active, and its rocky core provides energy to that ocean largely because of the tug of Saturn's gravity. So let us know about more in detail about Cassini spacecraft. So Cassini was launched in 1997, and Cassini was launched in 1997, and it crashed into Saturn's atmosphere in 2017, ending its 20 years of journey of research and study of Saturn's moon. Then recently, and there is one more fact that recently, with the discovery of 20 new moons, Saturn became the planet with the largest number of natural satellites. And there is the named Titan named moon of Saturn, which is its largest moon. So Titan is the name of the largest moon of Saturn. Then we should be talking about Culex mosquitoes. With changing seasons and rising temperatures, there is a growing concern of Culex mosquitoes in the capital. Culex mosquitoes are known carriers of Japanese encephalitis zoonotic disease, a potentially life-threatening but rare viral disease that causes acute inflammation of the brain. Diseases they vector. What kind of diseases these Culex mosquitoes carry? So they include arbovirus infections such as West Nile virus, Japanese encephalitis, or St. Louis encephalitis, but also filariasis and avian malaria. Cat-Q virus has been largely reported in Culex mosquitoes in China. So where is the breeding ground of these Culex mosquitoes? So they breed in dirty, stagnant water and preferred oviposition habitats such as rainwater barrels, catch basins, and septic tanks are rich in organic, which are rich in organic material. What is the reason for their reappearance? Warmer temperatures, season change, and moist conditions. So adult Culex mosquitoes do not fly far from where they develop as larvae, and unlike other mosquitoes that die with the coming of the first frost in autumn, they are not like other mosquitoes which die for the first hard frost in autumn. Presence. So where are they present generally? They are present in the hot and humid regions of the earth throughout the globe, except at the extreme northern latitudes. Culex mosquitoes hunt by detecting body heat and the carbon dioxide that humans exhale. So what? So we should be also knowing about what are these arbovirus infections. Arboviral disease is caused by viruses spread to people by the bite of infected arthropods. such as insects like mosquito and ticks. They occur during warm weather months. Okay, and we should be also talking about other types of mosquitoes. Which are the other type of mosquito? There is this Aedes aegypti mosquito. This mosquito is called yellow fever mosquito. Why it is called yellow fever mosquito? It is called yellow fever mosquito because it causes yellow fever. um, ठीक है. It is called yellow fever mosquito. And this Aedes aegypti mosquito, it spreads uh, dengue fever, chikungunya. These are important from your for your prelims, so you should be remembering these disease names because this is a recurrent phenomenon all the time. Zika virus, Mayaro, and yellow fever viruses. Yellow fever viruses, they carry these virus and causes these diseases. This is the life cycle of Culex species. Female mosquitoes lay eggs on the surface of a fresh or stagnant water. Eggs, then most eggs hatch within 48 hours. It transforms into a larva. Larva live in water. They develop into pupae in as few as 5 days, and that pupae live in water. They develop into adult flying mosquitoes in 2 to 3 days. Undersea internet cables. So why it was in the news? Facebook and Google are planning two undersea internet cables named Eco and Bifrost. You should be remembering these names, Eco and Bifrost, to connect the US to Singapore and Indonesia. So its length will be 12,800 kilometers. Eco will run from Eureka, California to Singapore with a stopover in Guam and there too in Indonesia. Google is only investing in Eco, whereas Facebook is investing in both the cables. What is the need of these undersea internet cables? Why are they laying it down? So the current COVID-19 pandemic across the globe has increased the need for reliable internet access, and this will provide vital new connections between the Asia Pacific region and North America and increase the overall trans-Pacific capacity by 70%. Okay. So we should be knowing about India's first undersea optical fiber cable. So India has recently launched its in the first optical fiber cable in Andaman and Nicobar and connecting Chennai to Andaman and Nicobar, and in particular Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay, it is 2,312 kilometers long. Now we should be moving on to our next section, that is defense and the news related to that within the past 1 week. Exercise Vajra Prahar was conducted. So it is which two countries conduct these exercises? It is a special forces joint training exercise conducted alternately in India and the USA. It aims to share the best practices and experiences in areas such as joint mission planning and operational tactics, as also to improve interoperability between special forces of both nations. Bilateral military exercises and defense exchanges are an important aspect of deepening bilateral defense cooperation between friendly countries. Okay, you can see that there is a growing bilateral defense cooperation between India and USA, and exercise Vajra Prahar helps in strengthening that relationship. Its 11th edition was conducted recently at a Special Forces Training School at Bakloh, Himachal Pradesh. So, where is India's Special Forces Training School is located? So, it is located at Bakloh, Himachal Pradesh. Then there is this Shantir Ogroshena 2021. It is a multinational military exercise. So this you should be remembering the name because UPSC has asked in prelims about various kind of defense exercises in the past. So it might ask that which country conducts Shantir Ogroshena, or there might be a match the following type of question. So Indian Army will participate in it along with Bhutan, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh armies. It will be held in Bangladesh to commemorate the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and mark 50 years of its liberation. So what is the theme of this exercise? Robust peacekeeping operations, and which were the military observers there? So USA, United Kingdom, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Singapore. Joint logistics nodes. This is going to be our last topic for today's session. Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat operationalized the third joint logistics node in Mumbai. This is the third joint logistics node to be set up in 3 months with the aim of integrating the military's logistics setup and improving its warfighting ability. Logistic nodes were operationalized in Guwahati and Port Blair on January 1, 2021. So the other two logistic nodes were at Guwahati and Port Blair, and the third one is going to be in the Mumbai. So these three nodes, you should be remembering the name of these three places where India's joint logistics nodes are set up. The joint logistics nodes will provide integrated logistics cover to the armed forces for their small arms ammunition, rations, fuel, general stores, civil hired transport, aviation clothing, spares, and also engineering support in an effort to synergize their operational efforts. Significance: the initiative would help in saving manpower, economical utilization of resources, besides financial savings. So, dear students, this is the end of our session, and with this, we conclude discussion for today's class. Hope you have learned well, and please share this with your friends so that they also learn something new. Thank you.